Okay, let's get the woo-woo out of the way, because then I can go on a hike. So this is just the other side of something, okay? It's the alternate universe imaginings. Just imagine all the dark things, generational curses, history repeating, just all the energy, how things like names or just events or certain people, they can just have so much energy gathering around them, and it's feeding something. Okay, so this is the woo woo, and I'm just making a disclaimer here. This is just an exercise. It's just showing what some conspiratorial minds might think of. It's what some disturbed minds might think of. So if you imagine being someone living with schizophrenia, which is possibly just some sort of basically long-term psychosis situation. It's really all about someone having psychosis for extended periods and often, and it's very painful and debilitating. Okay, doesn't make someone dangerous, although often someone in those psychotic states, they do murder. It might be a son murdering a mother, okay, a mother who's just tried to keep her son alive and out of prison for a long time, and then that's who murders her. It's not great. But this is just imaginings. But one thing I will say that I do believe is, I really do think there's a high chance that Lindsay Clancy was a victim in childhood of intrafamilial SA, okay? And I'm not saying anything in this video about anyone perpetrating any crime other than Lindsay Clancy has murdered her children, Cora, Dawson and Callan, okay? So it's not that. But remember, if you did watch the video I made about reflections on filicide, and there was the disorganized and organized killer, and in the studies used for this paper, every woman had been a victim of CSA, and I found that very interesting. And I found it interesting because I was thinking about Lindsay as a mother. Motherhood's very triggering for women who have been sexually abused, and this is because, you know, childbirth itself is violence against a woman's body, and the aftercare is very confronting and intimate. You know, that's all I'll say about that. And male children, in the study, male children were particularly hard for these women to bond with. And I also was wondering too, as Cora grew older, was she reaching the age that Lindsay was? Right, so I've only got a few, I've got a limited amount of minutes that I can make this, because I'm going to run out of recording. I didn't delete things before I made this. So let's just move quickly through this, okay? What would maybe someone that is a little bit warped think about with regards to all the names and the situations in the law in the Lindsay Clancy case? And this is just the first layer of things that I could put down, and everything would have layers and layers and connections, and it gets really bonkers, okay? And then people just don't realize how bonkers they are, all right? And I can say that because I've been bonkers, and I can look at things like this and know how people view things when they are in a wacko dacko state, okay? So you would look at names, Cora, Dawson, Callan, and you would look at the meanings of those names, and it would have this, everything would have great import, okay? That it was chosen for a reason, or that some energy made it so, okay? So that this energy could be within these lives. Cora simply means daughter or maiden. Dawson is son of the beloved. Callan is brave. Okay, so Cora, we've got, she's skiing, she's going to San Francisco with Daddy. She's got stomach aches. We've got Dawson, the drawing that I've shown you of Dawson holding the fireman's hose, and directly out of, his little hands are up and he's holding on to the hose, and there's the water coming out and it's putting out the fire. And I believe that it was Elaine Rossi that drew that picture. And we've got Callan the Brave, and he's drinking from his bottle in a photo that Elaine Rossi has taken. And we know that Lindsay's lament was that Callan wouldn't have his bottle, and she was worried about him not feeding if she went off to work. And we can see that Callan was a particularly bonny little baby, wasn't he? He was well nourished. And when we think of the amazing Elaine Rossi that Patrick dubbed amazing, oh gosh, I'm going to run out of time. She is both triggering and also a protective mechanism to Lindsay, okay? She's triggering her with these drawings. She is bringing up the abuse to Lindsay's mind. She's worried that Dawson and Cora are having the same fate. When Cora's coming home from these trips, what is happening inside the mind of Lindsay Clancy? Did Lindsay Clancy have stomach aches when she was a little girl and being hypothetically abused? Did Cora have some sort of smell about her? Was there some sense that Lindsay had that even subconsciously she didn't know why she was triggered, but she was? She didn't allow sleepovers at the in-laws. That's something that CSA survivors might often do. Elaine, torch, sunray, or fawn. And fawn can be the animal, but it can also be to fawn, okay, as part of a safety switch, a safety action. And Rossi is obviously red, okay. Clancy, son of red, and he's the son of the beloved. Dawson's son of the beloved. Clancy, son of red, or son of the warrior in Gaelic. Rachel, Patrick's new wife, the biblical Rachel. She's the younger sister of Leah, and Leah was going to marry Jacob, and then this person Rachel was going to marry Jacob, and Leah was substituted, and Jacob ended up in a marriage taking 7 years to work off the debt to Leah and Rachel's father so that he could marry Rachel as well, the one that he actually loved. You've got Leah, it spells heel, doesn't it? You'd look at that if you were a bit whacked. Okay, so Leah was able to easily give birth, and she kind of pushed that in Rachel's face, okay? She was so thickened that to the point of, she was using a surrogate, okay? What do we know about Rachel Dennis? That she is this fertility doctor. She's working with the LGBTQ, I don't know why she's got the O there. I haven't. It's not traditionally there. IA, family building, family building. So playing God with surrogates or what? I mean, what's the next thing for her, really? Implanting uteruses into male bodies so that they can have pregnancy. It's, so this is very dark, particularly that she is a facsimile and looks kind of Lindsay Clancy. You get this whole, switching thing. So Leah did eventually have babies. She had Joseph, and then she had Benjamin. She died in childbirth. You've got really difficult, traumatic birth, and this was to the point she died. And sort of Lindsay kind of felt that she died giving birth because she was never the same. She'd never be herself. She's never going back. Now, Father Roy Dennis. Roy is Rachel's father in real life, but Father Roy was canonically dismissed after 40 years, 40 years in the desert. He ordained a woman as a priest, and, people might think, oh, there's energy in that. Okay. The mother, Susan Clancy, Susan being Lily or Rose. She's supporting Lindsay. Because so Lindsay has been feeling like an island. Obviously, you make island out of Lindsay with the Y. That's simply, why did she feel like an island? So it just gets very bizarre, right? But why is Lindsay triggered? She's having stomachache. Dawson's bizarre picture. She's losing her husband. She feels like she's never going to be the same. And Rachel's been used as a symbolic figure, weeping for her exiled children and that sort of thing, right? So remember the woman from the study, she felt like she killed herself, not her children. And is that what Lindsay was doing when she's killing her children? She's killing the history of her life by killing her children. You've got the numerals, you've the numbers, you've got 3V, obviously it could be 3 victims, but 3 5s are 18. We've got the 18 minutes, so Patrick leaves, so most people are saying, at 5:15, and 18 minutes later he's ringing Lindsay at 5:33, and that's when she leaves and goes upstairs one level. So she was down there for 18 minutes with her 3 children. So 18 with 3 children is 666. Now, Yates being the gatekeeper of 666, right? So Andrea Yates, that's right. I'm trying to remember all this shit that I wrote down. Andrea Yates was trying to scratch 666 off her head. She literally made herself have a bald patch on the top of her head. She was trying to scrape off that 666. But, it's all about power plays, sleights of hand, being very triggered, even if it's subconscious, with the intrafamilial CSA in a woman who's an adult now. They're going to, possibly have any number of these things: hypervigilance, dissociation, be too permissive yet too harsh of a disciplinarian, real problems with boundaries, physical, as well as all sorts of just emotional boundaries, relationship struggles, so with her primary partner, and either focus on it all being rewarding or focusing on all of the drawbacks. And Lindsay had trouble just getting away from thinking about all of the drawbacks of parenthood, and struggling with her perception of herself as a mother, difficulty bonding with male children, and in relationships it's this malevolence and exploitation with the children. It's described as a malevolent socializing. Yeah. So then, you've got places, and it was Salem in Massachusetts, 1692, with the Salem witch trials. So it was a court of oyer in termino, which wasn't common at the time, which is, it's an English version of court, but it's the French hear and determine. And Chief Justice William Stoughton, wasn't it? We've got a William Sullivan, haven't we? Who actually is just embroiled in a bit of a mess, because 4 years ago he did have a case where he's committed a woman to 2 life sentences in prison. And fair enough too, she killed 2 of her children. She was in postpartum psychosis, and now there's a bit of a rigmarole because he didn't allow enough evidence in for that. He wasn't allowing medical records or psychiatric records. I'm not quite sure what. And I think there's a bit of a retrial happening there. So he's in a bit of trouble, but Chief Justice William Stoughton, isn't that fascinating? So he hanged 19 before the public outcry got so great. William is tough. He's tough on who? And then I was getting into some of the women, and anyway, look, it's all, and this was 330 years ago. People are always interested in, Freemasonry and the number 33 and that sort of thing. So in Massachusetts and Duxbury, there's the Tree of Knowledge. It's marked with a pillar, and gets all very biblical here. Of course, there was King Herod killing the possible future man who was going to take him down. So he executed all the male children 2 years and under. And Jesus managed to escape that if it was around the same time. But it's all, it's all in the Gospel of Matthew and written up there. I haven't gone into that a lot yet. So we've got Manhattan. Now, Damien Eccles waxes lyrical about a certain place in Manhattan where, there is a ley line. It's all energetic. And, where's Rachel Dennis, and where did Patrick Clancy run off to? There's this gossip that Rachel's dad, Roy Dennis, is the one that, is it in the Vanity Fair article or in some magazine, he was very busy in the first few months. He sold his house, he went travelling to Costa Rica and the like, where he was trekking and saying, isn't this marvellous, 4 weeks after his babies were murdered. I mean, look, I don't blame him just for needing a change of scene and just to get away and get into nature. I actually think that's great and the right thing to do, but I imagine I wouldn't be posting to TikTok and Instagram and things like that in quite such a chipper way. Might be a bit more introspective and melancholy, but I'm not sure how introspective Patrick Clancy is. And then he's in a magazine, and he's got his GoFundMe, and he's writing all that trite, cliched stuff about his family. And then he's photographed in this amazing little, his bachelor pad, but it's got these ginormous windows, and he's sort of wistfully looking out the window like a little like a little ornament or a stick insect sitting and gazing out over his new domain, that he's made it to New York, sort of thing, out of Duxbury. And he is apparently Roy Dennis found that apartment for him. Anywho, look, so if you're bonkers, you're going to think that there is just this dark energy with the substitution, with the 7-year fight for, Rachel to become Son of Red's wife. And, motherhood, fertility and everything was it's such a theme here. It's what it's all about, right down to the death of Rachel in childbirth, and Rachel being the doppelganger, being the proxy for Lindsay, and Lindsay being the substitution. It's all very muddled up, right? It doesn't really make sense, but this is how one would think, and it's and these themes and everything. I mean, I think this is dark, and it is, this is a woman who is part of the dangerous liberal crowd who experiment on children with hormonal drugs and things like that, and puberty blocking, so-called. Oh, we just stop them going through the wrong puberty. It's just chipping away at our humanity and our naturalness. And I don't know if you can call it playing God, but it really is messing with the psyches and the bodies of human beings. And it's transhumanism. And where does this is all of these things that people like Elon Musk, things that these people are doing in the world. They are world builders and culture builders, and they are looking to change humanity. They're looking centuries ahead. They're looking at androidal bodies, with human flesh or something. They're looking at prompting evolution in human beings in any way they can. And they start off with mental evolution, okay? I don't think people understand the mental evolution, and we can look at how the wildfire of the lack of morals or the lack of discernment that these pink ladies are having, and the women on TikTok and Instagram who are, there's a woman there, she's got this perfect little beautiful looking baby. I think the baby's 3, 4, 5 months. I have no idea. It looks about that age. Just so lovely. And she's sitting and she's bouncing the baby on her knee, filming herself, and she's holding a red cup or a cup of water, maybe not a red one of those red ones, but she's holding that. She sits there and she grins maniacally. This is evil. She's grinning maniacally at the camera as she just goes splosh. She's flicking water over the little baby into his face, and the confusion of this little baby, and shaking his head, and she does it splash, splash, until the baby just starts crying. Now, she might think, oh, my baby's not aware of what I'm doing. That is damaging that baby's psyche. This is how we create dis-ease in a human being, in a human child. We create dis-ease. They don't know why they grow up the way they do. This mother might be providing, but she's damaging that psyche. She is changing the course and the nature of this baby's life. He won't know why he feels uneasy around her. He won't be able to pinpoint this until later. And, but he's going to grow up. Will he be mistrusting? Is he going to act out? It's taking away. It is stealing that person's nature from them. and replacing it with something else. I really think it's dark and sick. And that's what these pink ladies are doing. It's abhorrent. It's repugnant. We women, we reject these women. You know, it's enough to make me wish I were a man and I would be a gay man and I'd be a total slut. But no, it is, in seriousness, it's a contagion going through, but it's warping people because they're not stopping to think. They're just being easily led. You know, this is why women really shouldn't be in power. Look at what feminism has done. You know, it pushes and twists women. It's actually misogynistic. It's hateful. You know, feminism, modern feminism, is why decent people become TERFs. I think we've discarded TERFdom again now a couple of years ago. But, you know, it got to a lot of people that had actually been very, you know, what you would call very open, accepting Generation X's who stop making a big deal out of everything, you know. But it's things are twisted now, and we can't have nice things, you know. But I hope the world recognizes, I mean, we just need to nip it in the bud. I hope the world recognizes that these women, they are a tiny minority. They're just out and loud, and they're obnoxiously promoting and everything. They are really going for it with trying to capture a big audience. And, you know, there are people, weak people, being swept along. Now, some of them, they just maybe have just gotten caught up in feeling understood, you know, because they can now be open about how much of a struggle it is for them to be with their little baby, you know. But the difference is a lot of these women, these are the narcissists, because, you know, we've got an epidemic of narcissists. So these are simply the narcissists, okay, that are supporting Lindsay Clancy, saying, like, you know, we are all Lindsay. No, we're not. But they're exposing themselves. I hope we can stop it from catching fire too greatly. But I hope people understand it. It's not the majority. They are actually a tiny minority, and they're nasty. Some of them think they're probably they just, and they don't have a self-awareness, okay? Some of them really think that they're doing the right thing, okay? Because maybe they have suffered and they had no one listening to them, and they're really triggered. So they've lost sight of things, okay? And there are the truly cruel and evil and manipulative and conniving, cunning, sly, plotting women that exploit them to have these followers. And that's unfair, and it's not nice, you know. Hopefully we can turn a lot of these women back, just like a lot of the TERFs, you know, women who were reasonably liberal and then they went over to the TERFdom and they've gone over to highly conservative. You know, maybe they're coming back a little bit in the middle as well and relaxing as things become a bit more sane again, as far as, you know, women being taken over by trans women in their sports and things like that. It's all calming down a bit after the Woman of the Year fiascos and things like that. Obviously being Dylan Mulvaney, a hideous Twinkie. So, not that Twinkies are hideous, Twinkies are delightful, and it's Dylan that is hideous. So, all right, this is about to shut off, but that's just, you know, it's just this same sort of, you know, wacko. Oh, wow, everything having meaning, you know, Son of Red, Kevin Reddington, obviously. Rachel being this historical figure in this, you know, the history of Manhattan and Massachusetts and where these things are happening and the time frames and all the connections of the players, you know. But, you know, in reality, I think Lindsay is a survivor of child intrafamilial sexual abuse. That could be cousin, okay, anyone, and I'm not accusing any person, but I think that's happened to her. Motherhood's been extremely triggering. I think Cora, she's seeing things there, it's triggering her. Dawson, and was Elaine evil or a protector, triggering Lindsay about abuse with her children? Anyway, that's all I'll say. Bye.